Good morning. Welcome to the Bay Area Council's Bay Area Business Hall of Fame. I'm Mary Huss, President and publisher of San Francisco Business Times and Silicon Valley Business Journal. We have a wonderful, inspiring program for you this morning. This year marks the 25th anniversary of the Bay Area Hall of Fame. This year also marks the 75th anniversary of the Bay Area Council. We wish that we were celebrating under happier circumstances, live in a ballroom, energized by, maybe 1,000 or so people gathered at this annual most inspiring event. But you do not make it through 75 years without encountering and overcoming many obstacles and adversity. We have seen our fair share of daunting challenges over the years, from earthquakes to fires to floods and deep economic downturns. But every time we've weathered the storm, and every time we find our way back to a better Bay Area. Indeed, we have innovated and invented our way out of some of the very worst times. It speaks to the resilience of our region and the vision and commitment of the member companies who, like the forward-thinking business leaders who created the Bay Area Council in 1945, continue to believe the Bay Area is the best region on the planet. So despite the current dark days, keep the vision and remember this is a region of entrepreneurship, opportunity, and possibility. Of our region's business and philanthropic leadership than the incredible visionary leaders we are honoring today, the late and beloved Bernard J Tyson, Susan Desmond-Hellmann, and the Trefethen family. So each in their own way has always seen bigger, better, and what can be. Their inspiring stories and impact offer us hope and optimism. Their examples show that by working together, we can and will overcome the challenges we face and come out stronger than ever. And our speakers this morning, boy, I can't wait. We have such a lineup. I wish for all of you that this event provides you inspiration, hope, vision, insight, and a belief there's a shining light at the end of a tunnel that looks kind of dark at the moment. But know that on the other side, there is a great future for our Bay Area. So be inspired this morning. Thanks to our sponsors and our amazing team who put this event together. And now, speaking of hardworking, visionary leaders with passion and determination to continue building a better Bay Area for all, please welcome Jim Wonderman, President and CEO of the Bay Area Council.
Hey, that worked. Hey, Mary, thank you. Thank you very much. You're so kind, and you've been such an amazing chair of the Bay Area Council during a time we weren't anticipating when you became chair that the region would be going through these kinds of challenges, and you've just been up to every single one, and I just enjoy working with you so much. We've been friends for a long time, but getting to work together like this has been just awesome, and you're so committed to the Bay Area Council and to this region. I want to start by thanking Kaiser Permanente and Greg Adams, who I'll introduce shortly, for serving as the presenting sponsor of this event. It happens to be that Kaiser and the Bay Area Council are both celebrating our 75th anniversaries together this year. It's not by accident, because it was largely in part because of Kaiser Permanente that the Bay Area Council was formed at the end of World War II. So thank you, Greg, and we'll talk a little more about you in a moment. I wanted to welcome to Kaiser Permanente Carrie Owen Pleats. Carrie Owen Pleats is the new Northern California regional president of Kaiser's, just joined, and is going to be, I believe, I don't think it's been announced, so I'll do it. She'll be the co-chair of the Bay Area Council Health Committee. So we're really excited to have you join and work with us going forward. And with that, congratulations, Greg, on your 75th anniversary. I know it's a really tough year for you in a number of ways, and we look forward to hearing from you. We've had great sponsorship this year. We wondered going into our first virtual event of this kind how it would go. And, you as our members and our supporters just came through so well for us, and it's so important at this time. So I want to thank our diamond sponsors, who are the Bank of America, Common Spirit Health, Gilead, PG&E, TMG Partners, and Union Bank. You stepped up big time for us, and we really appreciate it. I wanted to thank you, Mary, and the San Francisco Business Times for being our media sponsor and promoting the event. And we have several platinum level sponsors as well, who are McKinsey & Company, Royal Business Bank, Sutter Health, and UC San Francisco. So thank you to all our major sponsors. Showing on the screen are our gold sponsors. Thank you very, very much for your support and stepping up as you have. There's quite a few companies that came forward at a time when, it's not easy. And in talking, and our silver sponsors, I know in talking to a lot of companies, you folks said, we're having a lot of trouble, a lot of challenges, unprecedented, but we want to support the Bay Area Council and the Bay Area Business Hall of Fame because it's such an important part of our culture here in our region. I want to thank the executive committee of the Bay Area Council, which Mary chairs. What an amazing group. So helpful, so supportive at this challenging time, means the world to us. And when I say us, it is very much us. I'm blessed to have, I think, the greatest professional staff of an organization of this kind in my team. What a great group of people who, occupying these squares on the screen since the time we all went home back in March. Just been working their tails off to keep the Bay Area Council going and address issues in the region we didn't expect to have to address. And I know it's very, very hard. This is hard for all of us. So, who would have expected after this great, incredible economic run that we would see, jobs, hundreds of thousands of jobs going away, businesses closing. It's so difficult on our families. The constant talk of people and companies leaving the region. Our competitiveness is in question. Our local government institutions, schools are really stressed. Our kids are, not where they need to be with other kids in school. It's just tough on everybody. We're not alone in this. It seems to have hit our region really hard. We're working, you should know we're working really hard on all those issues. And, then of course, we've done reasonably well, I think, in terms of COVID-19 and the way the region responded to it. But we're seeing a big surge here right now, in California and in the Bay Area. And we were hoping, I think, not to see it. And, in a couple of days, it happens to be that we're holding a meeting with all of the county health officers from around the Bay Area to see if we could get everybody on a common platform. It's hard to do, to talk about how we talk about this, how we inform the public, how we work together, how can the business community respond. And so in that regard, since this is a bilateral conversation, we wanted to put forward a poll question really quickly. How would you rate the effectiveness of public health and other leaders in response to COVID-19? Too restrictive, just right, or not enough? And so, take a few seconds to respond to that, please. Just click away, I think is how it works. And we'll get you those responses. I've talked to so many of you about this and heard a lot of different answers and approaches and perspectives on this. And, I know it's tough as we were, seem to be coming out of it, and now we're going backwards. This makes it really hard. So we'll get the results in a minute. Despite the fact that we have, the economic challenges that we have and the health challenges that we have, this region's been through it before, as Mary says, and over the course of the 75 years that the council has been an organization, just in my time, so the .com bust and then the mortgage meltdown, and now this, and so we've had a cyclical economy, but we have always responded. And if you just take a look at the Bay Area, it's an incredible place with incredible people, incredible companies, innovation, and I believe we'll come back, but it won't be just because because we wish it to be. It's going to take a lot of hard work, and we're going to be in an environment that is different. It's not, we're not going to come back the way things were before. We're going to have to make adjustments, but we've been good at that, and I suspect we'll be good at it again, and we'll work together and we'll make it happen. As Mary said, we're not only honoring phenomenal people today, but we're also incredible leaders, but amazing speakers, very timely speakers in the speaker, Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House of Representatives, and the Chairman of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell. So I want to thank Alex Marin, who is the chairman of the Hall of Fame committee, for his leadership, not just in leading the committee, but in making this event possible. He worked really hard at this time around, and Alex, greatly appreciate you kind of doing what you did to make this event more effective than ever. And now we have a chance to memorialize this event by taking a photo of everybody, one big headshot. It's called a group fee. I haven't done this before. So in a moment, I'm expecting that a box will appear on your screen, and there's a button. I think it says Go Selfie, and you click on that button, and it will take a picture of you and link you up with everyone else. So go ahead and click that button if you will. Don't be shy. Then it says, once you say you do it, it says take a photo. I'm going to retake mine because I wasn't smiling. That's a little bit better. And we will share that with you, and you can share it on the social media using the hashtag BizHOF. So thanks everybody for supporting and coming today. We're really excited. Yeah, take those photos. I see you doing it. And with that, let me introduce to you the chairman and CEO of Kaiser Permanente. I have to say, in looking at Kaiser, this is it's not only the healthcare institution of our time. I think it's one of the great business stories of our time, and it's in the years I've been at the Bay Area Council, it's been one of my great pleasures to work with Kaiser Permanente on so many different issues over the years. So again, welcome Greg Adams, and we want to hear some comments from Greg, and on with the show. So thanks everybody, really appreciate it. Enjoy the day. I see there's a photo rendering going on. Beautiful. Okay, I'm going to jump.
Jim, I'm here now. Thanks for your leadership. We're adjusting to our technological challenges. But thank you, and Mary, thank you for acknowledging the Bay Area as the finest region in the country. We're really proud to be here today to partner with the Bay Area Council on its 25th Bay Area Hall of Fame and the 75th anniversary. And as you heard Jim say, this is Kaiser Permanente's 75th anniversary, and we're so proud to call the Bay Area our home. I think for all of us, today's event is happening at an extraordinary time in the history of our world and certainly our country. We've been challenged, we have been pushed, and we have relied upon each other to ensure a strong and coordinated response for our communities. I would be remiss if I didn't really call out my colleagues, my healthcare colleagues, Lloyd Dean from Common Spirit, Sarah Crevens from Sutter Health, and Mark Larrett from UCSF. We've spent countless hours, especially at the beginning of this pandemic, working together to develop solutions and to protect the health and safety of our communities. And as I acknowledge and think about our frontline workers across Kaiser Permanente, there have been several Bay Area Council members that have supported us and been on the journey with us. And I just want to do a brief shout out to a few of them. PG&E, who donated at the beginning of this pandemic much needed masks to our frontline workers. Thank you. The Clorox company that stepped up and provided us with critical supplies of bleach wipes. Thank you. And then Microsoft, who joined Kaiser Permanente, the American Hospital Association, Kearney, and the UPS to launch the Protected People initiative. Thank you. I also want to just do a shout out to Mayors London Breed and Libby Schaaf. Your leadership through this pandemic and what you have done for our communities and what you've done for our healthcare organization is nothing short of remarkable. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you for leading. Thank you for being present and taking on the public health challenge that we have. So thank you. And then I want to just note the city of Berkeley and Mayor Jesse Aragon. You were instrumental in helping Kaiser Permanente move really immediately to set up a 7,700 square feet COVID testing lab. And today we're doing more than 75,000 tests per week in that lab. So thank you for your tremendous support. You know, despite our challenging year, I'm glad that we were able to gather together and honor the Bay Area's most accomplished business and philanthropic leaders. And among those three leaders being inducted into the Hall of Fame today is my friend and former CEO and chairman of Kaiser Permanente, Bernard J Tyson. Bernard was a passionate leader. He was dedicated to Kaiser Permanente. He dedicated his life to Kaiser Permanente, to making a difference in healthcare. He tackled some of the biggest problems in health and healthcare, and he was also committed to the Bay Area and to the future of this region. So on behalf of Kaiser Permanente, I congratulate Bernard, but I also want to congratulate Susan Desmond-Hellmann and the Trefethen family, who are also being inducted into the Hall of Fame today. So I'll keep my comments brief. I congratulate our inductees. I wish us safe health, and I thank each of you for your leadership as we move forward through the next several months, which will be a challenge, but I am convinced that we're up to the task. So thank you.
Thank you, Greg and Kaiser Permanente, for your support and leadership in our community, our state, and our nation. We launched the Bay Area Business Hall of Fame in 1995 to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Bay Area Council and to remember and celebrate business, philanthropic, and civic leadership that makes the Bay Area so special. It is the brainchild of Dick Rosenberg. Over the past 25 years, we have inducted 77 outstanding Bay Area leaders. Let's take a look back. Wow, what a group of people. Fantastic. Thank you very much. So guiding us in selecting our honorees is a set of criteria that our committee believes best defines excellence in business, philanthropy, and civic leadership. These criteria include led a Bay Area-based business to a position of national prominence, pioneered an industry or business innovation that has had a significant impact on our regional economy, enrich the civic leadership of the Bay Area and improve the overall quality of life and well-being in our region, exemplifies excellence in business leadership and corporate citizenship, and respected and admired by industry peers. As we get ready to recognize our Hall of Fame class this year, I would like to thank my colleagues on the Hall of Fame committee. Their names are listed on the screen. Thank you for the time, thought, and deliberation that you give each year to ensure that we honor our selection criteria. Now, let me return to Jim for some technical information.
Thank you, Alex, and thank you, Greg. So again, on with the show, and we'll enjoy being together today virtually. Thanks, everybody.
Was a giant in the healthcare world, a former chair of the Bay Area Council. He was taken from us far too soon. The contributions and legacy he leaves behind continue to inspire us. To introduce our first honoree, please welcome another healthcare giant, Lloyd Dean, Chairman and CEO of Common Spirit.
Thank you, Alex. It is my great honor to introduce today's first Hall of Fame honoree, Bernard Tyson. Bernard was a great leader, a great competitor, but much more importantly, my dearest friend. Bernard's love for Kaiser Permanente was known by all. But his dedication to doing right for his members, for the employees, and for the communities that he served was second to none. Bernard, as a human being, was an example that we all admired, that I admired. So now, let's learn a little bit more about Bernard J. Tyson, the man.
Many kids dream of becoming a firefighter, a nurse, or an astronaut when they grow up. Bernard Tyson dreamed of running a hospital. Raised in a working-class family in Vallejo, Tyson's career aspirations were inspired by watching his mother's struggles with severe health issues. Over an incredible almost 40-year career, Tyson rose to become one of the world's most influential and transformational healthcare leaders. Almost all that time was spent at Kaiser Permanente, including as chairman and CEO from 2013 until his tragic death in 2019. Among his many leadership roles at Kaiser Permanente, Tyson led the team that developed the iconic and award-winning Thrive campaign in the early 2000s. It reflected both Kaiser Permanente's and Tyson's deep commitment to a more holistic, preventative view of healthcare.
And it's not just health care, it's lifestyle, it's behavior, it's the whole ecosystem that makes up a person's day.
Tyson was a driving force behind Kaiser Permanente's pioneering adoption of digital technologies to improve the quality of healthcare and make it more accessible and more affordable to more people. Tyson also envisioned the potential of technology to expand access to healthcare services through virtual channels. Under his leadership as CEO, Kaiser Permanente grew from 9.1 million members to 12.3 million members, saw revenues climb from $56 billion to $84 billion, and became a national model for quality care. But Tyson's impact was felt well beyond the healthcare world. The first African American to lead Kaiser Permanente, Tyson used his position to champion the causes of racial justice and racial equity. An essay he wrote in 2015 described his experience as a Black man in America and declared that it was time to revolutionize race relations. In 2017, Time magazine named Tyson to its 100 most influential people list. Civil rights icon John Lewis penned Tyson's tribute. Poverty, housing, and homelessness were among other thorny issues that Tyson stepped up to tackle.
At Kaiser Permanente, we believe strongly that people living on the streets of America as their home is just unacceptable, and we ought to collectively own the problem and work to solve it together.
That's why Tyson launched Kaiser Permanente's $200 million Thriving Communities Fund to address homelessness, create affordable housing, and provide economic opportunities in disadvantaged communities. As chair of the Bay Area Council, he spearheaded the organization's focus on addressing homelessness at a regional level.
He did it with such a sense of bigger purpose, not just for the Bay Area, not just for where Kaiser Permanente does business, but literally as a person that is a member of the human race and has a sense of basic decency.
Bernard Tyson's life ended too soon, but the sense of bigger purpose that he brought to everything he did will continue to reverberate through Kaiser Permanente and the communities it serves.
To accept the award on Bernard's behalf, we are honored to have with us Denise Bradley Tyson, who is continuing her husband's outstanding work as founder and chair of the American Heart Association Bernard J Tyson Impact Fund. I wish I were there with you, Denise, to hand you this award, and I look forward to having some kind of occasion in the not too distant future when we can do this together. We miss Bernard and we miss seeing you. Congratulations to you and your family.
Denise, it is wonderful for me to be here with you and want to thank you for all that you continue to do to heighten and to remind us of the man, Bernard Tyson. There's no question that his passing is still raw for all of us. But we come here today lifted up by the great work that you, along with the American Heart Association, continue to do, honoring this great man's and friend's legacy. His voice and his work around health equity, around racial equity, around racial justice is something that was important to him, important to this country. If you could maybe share with us, as he looks down upon this moment, what do you think this award means and would mean to Bernard?
I think Bernard would start by, and I think you can all, in all of our minds, his vivid, brilliant smile probably comes to mind first. And he would say thank you to his Bay Area Council family. He would say thank you to his Kaiser family, Kaiser Permanente family, on whose behalf or who worked tirelessly alongside of him to achieve the programmatic changes that he did while he was at Kaiser throughout his long career. And he would also say thank you to you, Lloyd, for being you guys had such a wonderful romance in terms of being friendly competitors, but at the end of the day, being allies and sort of being led by the same North Star in terms of wanting to deliver better healthcare outcomes for the communities that you serve. So he would be very, very honored and touched that his Bay Area Council family is recognizing him with this beautiful, beautiful award. For those of you who haven't seen it, it's a lovely sculptural piece. So that's where he
Denise. Yeah, Denise, a lot has been written and chronicled about Bernard's use of his voice and the pulpit that he had as the chairman of Kaiser Permanente to speak out about racial injustice, to speak out about health equities. I mean, you knew Bernard in a way that many of us could only imagine. Why do you think that was important to him? Why speaking out with all of the things that he was involved in? Why was this message and these issues so much a part of his life?
I think it was important to Bernard because it was very, very personal. Not only was he, first and foremost, however anyone looked at him, we learn as African Americans that the first lens through which people often see us is through the color of our skin, not through our accomplishments. So he walked through life looking at life through that lens. And then at the same time, having been brought up in a working class family, he was sort of confronting sort of healthcare challenges that, people everywhere in terms of the choices people have is one of the things that Bernard used to say I'm sure you remember, is he wanted to create a healthcare ecosystem where people walk through the front door for their healthcare needs as opposed to going through the back door, the emergency room, which is sort of a place of last resort for a lot of people as you sort of struggle with whether you put food on the table or you pay your rent or you look after your children's educational needs. So it was a very sort of personal journey for Bernard, which I think is part of the reason that his voice was so authentic in this space, that he was able to work across corporate lines, political lines, to get everyone rallying around sort of humanity, the humanitarian aspect of living life with dignity.
You have worked really hard along with the American Heart Association to establish the Bernard J Tyson Impact Fund. Two questions. One is, how can others get involved? And what are you hopeful that the impact of this fund will be on communities and on this nation?
Thank you for that question, Lloyd. The fund, I set up the fund after Bernard passed almost immediately because, as much as I love flowers and, cards, it seemed like there was a greater purpose in terms of how we could support and honor Bernard's legacy. Because as much work as he accomplished during his all too brief life, that there was a lot of work left to be done. I felt in some ways that he helped to establish the framework that we are now sort of looking at healthcare through, in terms of it being a holistic approach to starting with not only starting with the head, meaning the mental wellness of a person, and looking at the socioeconomic determinants that impact what kind of quality of life a person has, that there was so much work to be done still. And I think that it was even underscored even more during the coronavirus, when we saw the people who were on the front line, the service workers, many Black and brown people who unfortunately sort of still exist at the sort of overall at the lower socioeconomic level, that there was too much work to be done to sort of, to help make a difference. And one of the things that was important in terms of framing how we looked at the American Heart Association Bernard J Tyson Impact Fund was, for me, with my sort of Stanford and Harvard Business School hat on, looking at sort of systemic change. One, it's not just sort of doing a one-off handout to an organization, but looking at organizations, and it's really community focused in terms of we're trying to raise funds to go into every community across the country and identify community organizations and individuals who are already on the ground. They know the people whom they serve, that what can we do to sort of further empower their organizations in terms of, and we found that it doesn't take as much as, you might think to make a big difference in terms of their ability to serve their community. So looking at organizations and individuals that are already on the ground, that they possibly have they have models that can be replicated and rolled out into other communities. We're looking at continuing to partner with organizations, and thank you for leading, Common Spirit's contribution to the American Heart Association Bernard J Tyson Impact Fund, along with other members of the Bay Area Council family. I have to give a special shout out to Lynn and Mark Benioff, who, another one of Bernard's sort of, romance leaders. He was serving on the board of Salesforce when he passed, but Lynn and Mark, who are wonderful philanthropists in our community, stepped up and made contributions to the fund. But for those, we are reaching out. We already have reached out to, and I call you now part of my Bay Area family as well. So I hope y'all don't mind, because it was a privilege and a pleasure to get to know many of you through just sort of being by Bernard's side through our life journey together. That people can look at, they go to the Bernard J Tyson Impact Fund. It's on the American Heart Association website to learn more about the work that we're already doing, and that we will be reaching out to you to continue to help us do. And again, I have to thank Jim Wonderman and Mary Huss for sort of stepping up and partnering with us, along with Fortune Magazine, Cliff and his team, in terms of helping us to sort of amplify those stories of those organizations that are doing the work. Because, I think, again, with Bernard being an authentic voice, and there being so many sort of organizations that have sort of popped up during this time, that he represents a trusted brand, partnered with the American Heart Association long-serving brand, that that your money is going towards its intended purpose. And then having their ground force, as it were, in terms of having American Heart Association's team members throughout the country, along with our corporate partners that we're establishing. Our commitment is to use this fund to figure out how together we can make a difference, a meaningful difference, to achieving crew equality a reality, and changing sort of the paradigm, the healthcare paradigm for those who are challenged, particularly during these times.
Well, thank you. And Denise, one thing that I know for sure is that he is looking down and he is smiling. He is gracious that you are keeping the memory of the man and all that he contributed to society, the love that he showed for this country and for Kaiser Permanente. As we close this segment, what is one thing that you would like for everyone listening to remember about Bernard J. Tyson?
Now, that's an easy one, I think. As we continue, hopefully, to work together in terms of making meaningful change in the communities in which we live through the American Heart Association, Bernard J. Tyson Impact Fund, and even looking at the Kaiser Permanente Bernard J. Tyson Medical School in terms of the training that's being done for those doctors to go back in the community. I think, all of us have heard Bernard say, every day, regardless of what was on his plate, he used to always look for a beautiful moment in each and every day. And I can truly say that being recognized by you, his Bay Area Council family, that this would be one of those beautiful moments that he's rejoicing in heaven to sort of see you all sort of come together, not just about honoring his legacy, but about the commitment to be a partner and supporter in our Bay Area corporate community and the communities in which we live and where our customers reside.
Well, Denise, thank you. We will forever be appreciative of the love that you showed the man and for the love that he showed us all. May God bless you. And we look forward to hearing and seeing the impact of this important fund. So God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you, Lloyd. And thank you, Bay Area Council family.
Thank you.
He demonstrated his influence earlier this year in leading the Fed's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The Fed took early and decisive actions to lower interest rates, inject liquidity into various markets to ensure their proper function, and develop tools to bolster Main Street lending and municipal government support. Jay also coordinated the global support for financial markets during the crisis. Jay is a Washington D.C. native with an undergraduate degree from Princeton and a law degree from Georgetown. His background is in law, investment banking, and public policy. In 2012, Jay became one of 7 governors of the Federal Reserve Bank, overseeing the responsibilities of the Fed. He was nominated by Barack Obama. In February of 2018, Jay became the chairman of the Federal Reserve Bank system. Winston Churchill once said, "To be an effective policymaker, one must combine the virtues of wisdom and daring." Jay possesses both of these virtues. I'm pleased to welcome my friend Jay Powell here this morning. Jay, welcome to the Bay Area Council.
Thank you, Alex. It's great to be here today.
Let's start off with some fundamentals. Where do you see the economy today, and how do you see the path forward?
I guess I'd say a couple things. I guess the place to start is probably to say that in the spring we had a 2-month decline in economic activity and in employment that was by far the largest in living memory. And since then, really since April and May, since May and June, the recovery of the U.S. economy has been faster and stronger than we expected. So many millions are back to work. Investment and consumption are recovering. We just met with some home builders this morning, and the housing market is very strong right across the country. But there's some other things to keep in mind. First is that the pace of improvement has been slowing, and understandably so after the outsized bounce back of May and June. The recovery has also been uneven, too, with job gains greater for those at the higher end of the income spectrum than at the lower end of the income spectrum. And, of course, most of the job losses were among public-facing service industry, relatively low-paid people who skewed to being more minority and more women. That's who got laid off. That's where the pandemic had its biggest economic effect. So the recovery has also been uneven, and people in the lowest quartile have gotten far fewer of their jobs back. The final thing I'll say is that the recovery is incomplete. We still have 10 million people who lost work during the pandemic who have not gotten it back. And that, by the way, that's more people than were unemployed at the peak of the global financial crisis. So we have a long way to go. And looking ahead, I would say I generally see, and most forecasters generally see, the recovery continuing at a solid pace, but with significant downside risks, especially in the near term. And of course, the near term risk that we're most focused on is the rapid spread of COVID these days. Across the country, we're seeing new cases, we're seeing hospitalizations rise, and we're seeing states begin to impose some activity restrictions. Up to about 15 states have done so. And, the concern is that people will lose confidence in efforts to control the pandemic, and they'll pull back from activities that they think might put them at risk of infection. And there are some signs of that already. So, yeah, this is very much a concern. And as we've been saying all along, the economy can't fully recover until people are confident that it's safe to resume activities involving crowds of people. I ought to mention the vaccine, though, of course, in this spirit. So the vaccine news is certainly good news, particularly in the medium term. In the near term, there are significant challenges and uncertainties: the timing, the production, distribution, the efficacy for different groups, and even in the best case, widespread vaccination is months into the future. And with the virus now spreading at a fast rate, the next few months may be very challenging. So it's probably too soon to say with any confidence what the impact on the path of the economy will be from the vaccines, although, of course, they're going to turn out to be bad news when they are broadly available. I'll mention one more thing, if I may, Alex, and that is, from the very start, we've been concerned about longer run damage to the productive capacity of the economy. And what that looks like is workers who are out of work for long periods of time. They may lose their contact with the labor market. They may lose their skills. And the evidence is strong that if you're out of work for a long time, it may be hard to get back the life that you had, get back to the work that you had. For families in particular, particularly women, leaving the workforce in big numbers now as children stay home, we're seeing that. And so you could see women who, not by preference, but by requirement, are at home and their careers may be hurt. And for businesses, something like this can lead to unnecessary insolvencies. And there are always going to be insolvencies, but there could be more than, and that would be tragic particularly for smaller businesses, which may have taken generations to build. So we got a long way to go. The last thing I'll say is we're not going back to the same economy. We're going back to a different economy, and we can talk more about that. But this economy will be different, and that's going to mean that those people who worked in the service industry, they may need help and support for a time as they find work in new places. So the Fed will stay here and be strongly committed to using all of our tools to support the recovery for as long as it takes until the job is well and truly done.
So the past is instructive. Your response, along with the Treasury, working hand in glove with the Treasury earlier this year, gave tremendous support to the U.S. economy by fiscal and by monetary support. How do you see that playing out in the months ahead, and how do you distinguish between the spending of the fiscal side of it and the lending on the monetary side of it?
Monetary policy and fiscal policy work in very different ways, as I'll talk about in a second. And in a severe downturn, ideally they would both be deployed to support the recovery, complementing one another, and together providing broad support of different kinds for the economy. And so far, I would say both have been deployed quite aggressively, and the faster than expected recovery that we've seen, reflects that fact. And I would also add that there's such a long way to go to get back to full employment, to get back, frankly, to something close to the economy or akin to the economy we had just back in February. It's a long way to go, and I think it's likely the economy will continue to need support from both monetary policy and fiscal policy. So it's essentially what our tools allow us to do is to stimulate aggregate demand by lowering interest rates and also to support the flow of credit in the economy. These are really important powers. They're very strong powers, and we've used them historically in historically aggressive ways, and appropriately so. And as I mentioned earlier, we'll continue to do so until the job is done. But this is far from a traditional economic downturn. Suddenly, in March and April, tens of millions of people were suddenly unemployed because effectively a natural disaster happened and forced a lockdown of certain parts of the economy. And as I mentioned, the burdens fell particularly on those least able to bear them. So beyond monetary policy, what fiscal policy can do is it can provide, this is taxing and spending, can provide direct, targeted income support for groups that really need it. And there hasn't been a bigger need for it in a long, long time here. And those powers, the powers to tax and spend, are strictly the province of our elected representatives in Congress. They get to decide who bears the costs and who gets the benefits of those things. And it's essential in our system that it be elected representatives who do so. And in the CARES Act and a couple other bills they passed, this is the largest and fastest response to any downturn since the Great Depression. It was quite large, and I would say overall effective. Don't expect perfection from a bill that's written, at warp speed, if you will. But nonetheless, this was very strong, and I think that the stronger recovery that we've had is in particular a function of that. I'll just add that questions of financial sustainability arise. Can we afford these deficits and that kind of thing? And those are issues we're going to need to return to as a country. We won't have a choice. Ultimately, we will return to those issues. They're not issues that I would prioritize now. The time to be focusing on fiscal sustainability is when unemployment is low, when the economy is growing, when taxes are rolling in. And that's the time to really focus is during the healthy part of the business cycle, not when the unemployment rate is high and millions of people are out of work.
But Jay, as you balance the fiscal versus the monetary, there are long-term implications to either path. And in choosing one over the other, it's going to determine what the future that we face is going to be. So given the choice, which way would you go to minimize the negative impacts of too much debt or too great a deficit?
Yeah, I don't see it so much as a trade-off. I would look at it this way. So I think the question with fiscal policy is, have you done too much? And, is that going to, put us on a path to an unsustainable fiscal path? The truth is we're already on one. It's not an emergency. The way you get back on a sustainable path is you have the economy growing faster than the debt for a long, long period of time. That's what a successful program looks like. And we will go to work on that when the economy's ready for it, I would hope, in a perfect world. And that's the way that'll work. In terms of what we do, we used our emergency tools. So we have particular tools, the lending tools that we've used to lend to state and local governments and non-financial businesses and others. Those are only available with the permission of the Secretary of the Treasury under unusual and exigent circumstances, which means in an emergency. So we're using them. When the time comes, we'll put those tools away. And no one wants the Federal Reserve to take over the function of private lending in the economy. These tools are only available when the private lending markets break down, and they did in March and April. So we came in, and the markets have reopened, and when the right time comes, and I don't think that time is yet or very soon, we'll put those tools away, as I've said. So, and there shouldn't be any long-term effects of that. I don't think that monetary policy, the whole point is for us, the goal for us is to support maximum employment and stable prices. Neither of those goals is put at risk in the long run by the actions we're taking now. Far from it. We're actually doing what we can to hasten our progress toward those goals.
Well, let's focus on the Fed side of the equation for a moment. The balance sheet of the Federal Reserve Bank has grown from $900 billion in 2007 to over $7 trillion today. In 2012, when the Fed started to taper, there was the taper tantrum. And in 2018, there was another tantrum with respect to the autopilot that was announced, a program of slowing the buying of securities. So how and when do you see the Fed getting the balance sheet back to some sense of normal, by which I mean neither stimulative nor restrictive policy?
Okay, so Alex, I would say it's really premature to even think about normalizing to think about the size of the balance sheet and things like that. We're focused for now on achieving the goals that Congress has given us, maximum employment and price stability. And we'll start to think about when it's time to slow down our asset purchases, which would slow the growth of the balance sheet, and take further steps going forward. We'll start to think about that when there's been a whole lot more progress toward those goals. But I would say, based on our experience, some of which you mentioned, we do know the steps to take, and we know that we need to carefully communicate those steps well in advance. And what we wound up doing after the global financial crisis was, in 2013, we announced that we would gradually taper our asset purchases, so they ended about a year later. So gradual move, and then the size of the balance sheet was held constant for several years. And as the economy grows, then the ratio of the Fed's balance sheet to the size of the economy shrinks. So that's one thing we can do. I would also say, though, in terms of, I won't go into all the detail, but what really sets the size of the Fed's balance sheet in the longer run is the public's demand for our liabilities. And this probably isn't widely understood, but the Fed is like a bank in the sense that we have assets and liabilities. We're like a small bank, except we're not small, but our balance sheet is actually less complicated than a commercial bank's is. And so we have our principal liabilities that make up for most of our liabilities are currency. And everyone knows what currency is, and the public demands that. Of course, currency is an asset in the hands of the public, and also bank reserves, which is just commercial bank deposits at reserve banks. So, and those are assets to the commercial banks, but to us, they're liabilities that we issue. So, ultimately, a lot of the growth in the balance sheet after the global financial crisis was because of increasing demand from the public for currency, and even more than that, increasing demand from the banks for bank reserves. And the reason there was so much demand for bank reserves was that banks were required to hold very much higher quantities of highly liquid assets. And one of the most favored kinds of highly liquid asset, all of the assets that we create are effectively risk-free. So they're very popular for banks. That's where a lot of the growth of the balance sheet came in. But ultimately, that's a question we will return to, and we'll use, we have a playbook, and we'll no doubt we'll improve upon it. But we know, I think, how to normalize policy over time. And one key is telegraphing everything you're going to do well in advance to avoid surprises, and then moving very slowly.
Well, let's talk about growth for a moment. We're in a global economy, and there are global factors that are influencing the growth of the U.S. economy, such as demographics, productivity, savings rates. How are these global factors, including technology, impacting your view of monetary policy?
So I guess I'd start by saying our economy is always evolving. And these are powerful and sustained global forces that you're talking about there. And they've led to fundamental changes in our economy that have important implications for the conduct of monetary policy. So we have a strategy document, and we write down what our strategy is. It's called our consensus statement. And we write down what we call our policy framework. And that needs to evolve to meet the new challenges. If you look back, as you can remember, well, Alex, the challenge 40 years ago, of course, was high and rising inflation. That's essentially what central banking was about, was reestablishing credibility for getting inflation under control. And under Paul Volcker, the Fed managed to do that. Since that time, central banks around the world have done the same, and using a framework called inflation targeting. The challenges keep evolving, though, and for much of the past 2 decades, many central banks around the world have been struggling with too low inflation. And I know that's highly counterintuitive. I know from our Fed Listens events around the country that too low inflation is a challenging idea, but nonetheless, inflation that is persistently too low can pose dangers for the economy. And to see why that is the case, lower inflation means lower interest rates. In every interest rate is included an estimate implicitly of future inflation as well as a real return. Lower interest rates mean that the central bank has less room to react and less power than to support the economy in a downturn. That imparts a downward bias on economic activity, employment, and inflation. And we've seen this exact dynamic whereby low rates lead to weaker activity and lower inflation become a self-reinforcing disinflationary trend. We've seen it happening around the world, and we really don't want that dynamic to take root here. And I guess I'd quickly touch on four principal changes that have emerged over recent decades, and I would say now amount to the new normal. The first is just that for these advanced economies, the growth rate, the trend growth rate is lower than it used to be. That's because population growth is lower, and it's because productivity growth is lower. Secondly, as I mentioned, the general level of interest rates has fallen around the world. Third, and on a happier note, we saw, and some other nations did as well, over the last couple of years, historically low unemployment and really labor market conditions that were essentially unprecedented over the last 50 years. And we saw, importantly, that the benefits of a really strong labor market began to flow in the last couple of years to those at the lower end of the income spectrum. So more of the wage gains went to people at the lower end of the income spectrum. You saw labor force participation, which is a critical statistic that the United States lags in. It moved up against all predictions, and particularly for minorities and women. So it is really hard to overstate the societal benefits of a strong labor market. So that's the third thing I would point to. And the last thing is we saw all of that without seeing inflation, troubling inflation. Of course, inflation barely responded to that. In an earlier time, there was a tight connection between very low unemployment, 3.5% in this case, around there for a couple of years, and inflation. That connection we knew it was weak, but we had to live through it to really see how weak it was. So we took all of that in mind. My colleagues and I actually conducted the first ever public review of our monetary policy, strategies, communications, and tools, and announced the results this summer. And we made some, I think, quite significant changes to our policy framework and the way we think about the job that we do to support the public. First, we looked at everything we learned, and we decided to think of maximum employment as a broad and inclusive goal, meaning we will look at not just the headline number, but maximum employment implies that you're looking at minority unemployment rates and other unemployment rates, not just the top line. We also said that we would only react to shortfalls in employment. This sounds, technical, but essentially we would say if we have an estimate of what maximum employment might look like, if we're short of that, then of course we would keep rates low. But what we're saying now is even if we go past that estimate, that alone will not be enough for us to raise interest rates. We will wait till we see actual inflation or other trouble. On the price stability side of our mandate is maximum employment and stable prices. We reaffirm that our long run goal remains inflation of 2%. But to achieve that, we need to keep inflation expectations anchored at 2%, and to achieve that, we need to achieve inflation that averages 2% over time. And to do that, following periods when inflation runs persistently below 2%, we will aim to achieve inflation moderately above 2% for some time. This is all new for a central bank to deliberately aim to overshoot. And what it amounts to is a robust updating of our framework, again, in response to the fundamental changes in the structure of the economy that we've seen evolving persistently over the last few decades.
Well, so Jay, let's combine these two issues of global factors that are playing in the U.S. economy and putting the U.S. economy in global perspective, and the whole concept of increasing the inflation target. Is that going to impact the dollar and therefore put in jeopardy the reserve currency basis of the U.S. dollar?
You know, I think that's quite unlikely, certainly in the foreseeable future. Over the past few decades, there's been discussion of that. People have thought maybe SDRs, which are associated with the IMF, or the euro or the renminbi, would challenge the dollar's role. It hasn't happened. The role of the dollar as a reserve currency, financing currency, invoicing currency around the world just hasn't changed over the last couple of years ago. Our dollar markets, treasury and currency markets, are the deepest and most liquid in the world. More than that, though, to be the reserve currency, if you look at our dynamic economy and financial system, look at our open capital markets, our strong democratic institutions, including an independent Federal Reserve, those are the things that really make the dollar a safe and reliable currency. And as long as those things remain true, as long as we're that country with those institutions, and then the world will choose to see the dollar as a leading reserve currency, or currently really by far the leading reserve currency. Of course, if you look through history, different currencies, it tends to be a persistent role, but it's not permanent. We have to, be those things to continue to warrant that status.
So we only have a few more minutes, so I'm going to have to ask you to go through kind of a lightning round here, Jay. So okay. Let's talk for a moment about the responses during the Great Financial Crisis, how the Fed responded to the Great Financial Crisis and its regulatory capacity, and how it's different this time. How would you characterize the banking system today vis-a-vis during the Great Financial Crisis?
So we spent a decade or more with the banks, strengthening the banks, much higher levels of capital, much higher levels of liquidity, a better sense of the risks they run and how to manage them, stress testing, resolution planning. And this time around, I'm happy to say that so far, the banks have held up well. They absorbed a tremendous amount of deposits coming in at the beginning of the pandemic. They also made a ton of loans as customers pulled down on their lines of credit. We can't. No one can be complacent about this. The banks have taken big reserves against potential losses that they expect. But I think until we're well and truly through this, no one can be in a position of being complacent, including the banks and including the supervisors and regulators.
Got it. So you've been with the Fed since 2012, first as a governor and now as chair. What have you and your colleagues learned, and how has the Federal Reserve changed during your tenure?
You know, the big part the big learning, I think, is the economic learning that came. I came in 2012, and you didn't really know at that point. It was impossible to know at that point whether those factors that I talked about were going to go away or were going to be persistent. I mean, I still thought that the economy might go back onto its old growth track, and many people did. It didn't, and it didn't happen anywhere in the world really among advanced economies. So that's the main economic learning. You know, it's slower growth, lower productivity, lower interest rates, disinflationary pressures around the world, but a lot of benefits. I'll go in a different direction there, though. The thing I think that the other thing that's sunk in, and this shows up in surveys, is that large public and private institutions around the world have really struggled to hold on to the trust and faith of the public. And that's government, that's big businesses. And so I really think that it's on us to aggressively seek in our democratic system transparency, accountability, and hence democratic legitimacy. So we work really hard to reach out to the public and particularly to their elected representatives in Congress who have oversight over the operations of the Fed. We've greatly increased our interactions with members on both sides of the aisle in the House and the Senate And our approach is to say, we'll tell you what we're thinking. We really, we want to understand what your concerns might be and listen carefully to them. And so I think if you're not doing those things and aggressively seeking transparency and accountability, you're courting trouble in this world where, generally speaking, the surveys show that people are losing faith. That's the other thing I think that's become quite clear in the last decade.
Well, congratulations on what you have done there to advance that transparency and clarity for the Fed. And let me conclude with one final question, and that is about income inequality. We have characterized this recovery as a K-shaped economy where people at the bottom end have been disadvantaged and possibly permanently disadvantaged. What is the Fed's role here, and how can you turn this around and make America a more equal country?
So income inequality is obviously a big economic and social issue in our country today. And we have, I would characterize, an important but limited role in reducing inequality. Of course, really to address these long-standing, deeply rooted problems.
During an amazing career, she defied conventional paths, reinvented herself more than once, and played a major role in making the Bay Area a global science leader. To introduce her, it's my pleasure to welcome Ranjana Clark, Bay Area President and Head of Global and America's Transaction Banking at Union Bank. Ranjana?
Thank you, Alex. I couldn't be more honored to introduce our next Bay Area Business Hall of Fame inductee. Throughout an illustrious and pioneer medical, scientific, and philanthropic career, Dr. Susan Desmond-Hellmann has devoted her life to improving the human condition. To everything Sue does, she brings intense curiosity, a voracious appetite for continuous learning, and a fierce energy for taking on new and different challenges. Few people can say they've reached the highest levels of business, academic, and philanthropic leadership in their career. Sue can. She's also broken more than a few glass ceilings along the way. Her path has not always been conventional, but it has always produced remarkable results. Sue's contributions to the Bay Area have been nothing short of incredible. She put Genentech on the map as a leading producer of important life-saving cancer medicines, and her leadership at both Genentech and later as the first woman chancellor of UCSF helped establish the Bay Area as one of the world's most important biotech hubs. Before we sit down with Sue, let's take a moment to learn a little bit more about this great leader.
Bay Area business, academic, and philanthropic giant Sue Desmond-Hellmann never does anything halfway.
I hope that when I'm at my best, I'm fierce.
It's a trait that has made Desmond-Hellmann a pioneering leader throughout an extraordinary career in life sciences, biotech, academia, and philanthropy.
When I get excited about things, I'm all in.
Inspired by her father's work as a pharmacist and her mother's career as a school teacher, Desmond-Hellmann knew early on that she would focus her life's work on giving back and helping other people.
Seeing how my dad was so focused on people who were suffering or sick made a big impact on my wish to see if I could do something to contribute in medicine.
After training at prestigious UC San Francisco to be a cancer doctor, Desmond-Hellmann and her husband Nick, who is also a doctor, traveled to Uganda to study HIV/AIDS and help build the country's healthcare infrastructure. Witnessing the country's extreme poverty and suffering would shape her world and life view in profound ways.
I think it's not an exaggeration to say that in many ways I was never the same.
I felt so turned upside down in terms of how I thought about my own need to give back and make a difference and just show up better and differently.
She has lived those words to their fullest. First at Bristol-Myers Squibb, and later, during 14 years at Genentech, Desmond-Hellmann led the development of revolutionary new cancer medicines that would help millions of people around the world. She transformed Genentech into the nation's #1 producer of anti-cancer drug treatments, helping establish it as one of the preeminent biotech companies in the world, and the Bay Area as a global life sciences industry powerhouse and center of excellence. Forbes magazine named her one of the world's 7 most powerful innovators. Fortune magazine named her among the top 50 most powerful women in business 6 times. And she was named to the Biotech Hall of Fame in 2007. Throughout her career, she has never shied away from taking big risks and taking on new challenges.
The risk of failure for me is something that is a part of being an innovator. I don't think you can do excellent innovation without failing.
Or working extremely hard.
What I want it to be like when I'm leading is both fun and exhausting. You don't get great things without trying hard.
Desmond-Hellmann's tireless work ethic and spectacular success in the private sector didn't go unnoticed.
66% women.
In 2009, she became the first woman to be appointed Chancellor of UC San Francisco. Desmond-Hellmann steered UCSF through the Great Recession, attracted hundreds of millions in new financial donations, led the university's massive expansion in San Francisco's Mission Bay, including the development of the UCSF Benioff Children's Hospital, deepened beneficial public-private partnerships, and pioneered the exciting new field of precision medicine. When Sue announced in 2009 that she was departing UCSF for yet another new challenge, then UC President Janet Napolitano praised her for leaving the university a better, more vibrant institution than when she arrived. That new challenge? Nothing less than solving some of the world's biggest and thorniest public health and social problems as CEO of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the largest philanthropic foundation on the planet. Challenges like ending poverty, eradicating infectious diseases like polio and malaria, and empowering more people to become leaders by improving education. And when it became clear to Sue in 2019 that health issues and her own desire to spend time with husband Nick and family meant she couldn't give the Gates Foundation her all, she followed her own advice about not doing anything halfway and announced she was stepping down. Desmond-Hellmann hasn't indicated what might be next for her. She remains a professor at UCSF, but you can be sure that whatever it is, she'll be all in.
I want everything I experience to be meaningful and special. And I've not always been great at work-life balance, but I'm really good at having fun.
Congratulations, Sue. It's great to see you, and I look forward to when we can get together in 2021. I also want to thank Nancy Bechtel, your good friend, for inviting you to join us. It's a great pleasure to have you as part of our Bay Area Business Hall of Fame. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thanks to you, Alex. Thanks to Nancy and everybody at the Bay Area Council. I really, really appreciate this very much. Thank you.
Have you gotten your statuette there?
I do, and I have to say it is spectacular. Look at how beautiful it is.
Beautiful.
On the mantle behind me here. It's really lovely. I will cherish it. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Great. All right. Well, Sue, congratulations. And I love it that love having fun. So just a couple questions for us and the audience so we can learn from you. I'm curious, given all your roles, what are the qualities of leadership that have been most important for you in your career?
Well, you heard some of them in that lovely video. I would say above all else, what I hold myself accountable for is bringing out the best in others. And we hear so much now about a sense of belonging, diversity. By the way, I'm thrilled to be in the same ceremony as Bernard Tyson, speaking of just an amazing person who I always looked up to.
Our next honoree is a family that has been a force for good in the Bay Area for 3 generations. To introduce them, I'm pleased to welcome Thomas Keller. Thomas has been setting the standard for luxury dining for over 25 years. His restaurants, including the French Laundry, Per Se, Bouchon, and Bouchon Bakery, are known worldwide. He is the only American-born chef to have received multiple 3-star Michelin ratings. Thomas, welcome to the Bay Area Council.
Thank you. Thank you, Alex. I'm immensely honored to introduce our final Bay Area Business Hall of Fame inductees today. In August of 2014, a tragic earthquake rocked the Napa Valley just as grape harvesting season was beginning. A number of wineries suffered damage and many, many, many bottles were lost. None was hit worse than the Trefethen Family Winery, whose historic and seismically vulnerable McIntyre building buckled. More than a building, it was a symbolic and operational heart of the Trefethen Winery. Within hours, the Trefethen family leapt into action to reopen the business under tents and other temporary structures. Over the next 3 years, under the leadership of Haley Trefethen, the family rebuilt the McIntyre building stronger and better while maintaining almost all of its historic features. It's a testament to Trefethen family's incredible resilience, their commitment to preserving and celebrating the region's history, and their tireless work ethic. For over 75 years and across 3 generations, the Trefethen family has contributed to the growth and prosperity of the Bay Area region. But there's more to their story than winemaking. Let's learn a little more about the Trefethen family.
The story of the Trefethen family is inextricably woven into the 20th century rise of the Bay Area as a global economic powerhouse. Spanning 3 generations and touching every corner of the region, it's a remarkable story of hard work, reinvention, and giving back. Eugene Trefethen was attending UC Berkeley in the late 1920s when he began working summers as a laborer at a sand and gravel plant in Livermore, run by renowned industrialist Henry J. Kaiser. Within a few years, the Oakland native rose to become one of Kaiser's most trusted and accomplished executives, leading the construction of such iconic projects as the Bay Bridge, Hoover Dam, and Shasta Dam. Over 5 decades, Trefethen translated Kaiser's lofty aspirations into reality and built Kaiser Industries into a vast industrial titan that produced everything from ships and cement to bridges and dishwashers. And it was during Trefethen's tenure that today's Kaiser Permanente was born to provide affordable, quality healthcare for the company's many thousands of workers, and later, millions of Americans. After retiring in 1974, Eugene and wife Catherine began a new chapter in the Trefethen family story that would give rise to one of the world's greatest winemaking regions. On an historic but neglected estate in the sleepy Napa Valley that the Trefethens purchased as a retirement retreat, son John and his wife Janet founded the winery that bears their family name. Behind a tireless work ethic, the Trefethens, within a few short years, had established a world-class winery, and in 1979, their Chardonnay was named best in the world.
I think it's very important that in the wine business, families are involved because you have to have such a long-term perspective. And our interest is to produce wines in a very elegant style.
That long-term perspective would also guide the Trefethens in elevating the Napa Valley into the revered global brand and destination it is today, establishing or leading many of the institutions that have been key to growing the industry. Janet spearheaded the winery's marketing efforts, becoming one of the industry's first female executives and a driving force behind the valley's now famous culinary scene.
The wine world has changed enormously since we started in '73, and for women in particular.
With John and Janet focused on the winery business and promoting Napa Valley, Eugene and Catherine turned their time and energy to philanthropy and civic leadership. Eugene served as chair of the Bay Area Council from 1973 to 1975, and the Trefethens gave generously to the arts and education, including UC Berkeley, Mills College, Napa Valley College, UC Davis, the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art, the United Way, Boy Scouts, United Negro College Fund, the Oakland Symphony Orchestra, and UC San Francisco, among others. As John and Janet began to step away from daily operations, a new generation of Trefethens stepped forward. Lorenzo Trefethen took over the vineyard's marketing, sales, and financing, bringing new innovations to the winery's products and packaging. He's also continuing his family's tradition of giving back, serving on the board of the Bay Area Council and spearheading numerous efforts to benefit the community.
Every year, we're really maintaining that pioneering spirit that my grandparents and then my parents started with and has kept us going through these last 50 years.
Haley Trefethen became the voice of the Trefethen Family and Company brand, leading the vineyard's innovative efforts in sustainable winemaking and helping lead many of the wine and grape growing associations her father and mother were instrumental in creating.
We've got 40 years of history of being in a well-established, trustworthy brand that's, all estate fruit. We're producing things quality year after year. But at the same time, there's an incredible amount of innovation.
Whether it's producing award-winning wines, prioritizing environmentally sustainable vineyard production, or giving back to the community, the Trefethen family's pioneering spirit, resilience, and leadership show no signs of slowing down.
We've just become more and more confident and assured of what we're doing. And that is very much about celebrating our history while embracing the future.
Congratulations to the entire Trefethen family. I had the great pleasure to have known Katie and Jean Trefethen, and John and I worked together on some important transportation measures at the Bay Area Council. I look forward to getting to know the future generation up in the Napa Valley. Jean was a powerhouse, and Kaiser would not have been what it is today without his vision and determination. Jean was also a devoted member of the Bay Area Council, a former chair, and a real force in our development. So to the entire Trefethen family, congratulations. Who's got the statue there? Ah, there it is. Hey, John. So congratulations. Congratulations. So to lead our conversation with the Trefethen family, we have a gentleman who has a lot of experience in the food and wine business as a consumer, and that is Michael Covarrubias. Michael is the chairman of TMG Partners, a Bay Area real estate development firm, and a former chairman of the Bay Area Council. Michael, I look forward to this.
Thank you, Alex. Well, I don't know how many of you hear more than one of me at this moment, but hopefully just one. And I got to say, in the year of COVID, I cannot imagine a more appropriate awardee than a winemaking family, since everybody has tripled their consumption this year. But yeah, I'd like to congratulate the family, John, Janet, Lorenzo, and Haley, your extended family. You've received a lot of awards around the world for your wine and your great product. And now you're part of the Bay Area Council's Business Hall of Fame. So, Janet, let's start with you. What do you see as the most proud moment in your storied history?
Oh my goodness. I'd say this has got to be one of them right now, right?
Yay.
Too bad Katie and Jean aren't here to celebrate with us. But, it's really a thrill. And I think that when John and I started the winery in 73, we never dreamed we would be here receiving this recognition. And it means so much to the four of us. Right. As a matter of fact, when we started the winery, there were fewer than 25 wineries here, and everybody thought we were absolutely nuts and crazy to be doing that because there was no wine industry. And similarly, there was no culinary industry. Napa Valley was a culinary desert. There wasn't a ray of hope or light on the horizon. Americans were not aware of the treasure that we all have, that we carry around, and that's our palates. It has been exciting and rewarding to play a small role in helping people find the jewel of taste that we all have. Food and wine can bring such pleasure and such joy. In the early 70s, you did not see many women in the wine business. I am pleased I was able to help open a few doors there. In the beginning, John and I made commitments to grow the best grapes we possibly could exclusively from, and make the best wines possible from those grapes that would reflect their heritage, their soil, and their place. We vowed also to take care of our employees as an extension of our family and to conduct our business with integrity. We promise to sustain our ground, to be good stewards of the land and all it embraces. Today, it is with pride and joy that both Haley and Lorenzo have embraced these responsibilities and are committed to their continuance. Trefethen's future shines bright.
Well said. Thank you. So, Haley, you're still on mute, so don't forget to go off of that. But I want to ask you a simple question regarding changes. So, other than we've had droughts, wildfires, and pandemics, what are the biggest changes you've seen in the winemaking business, and how are you see it reflected in the quality of your wines?
Yeah, that's a great question. In our 50-year history, we've definitely seen winemaking styles change. However, I think where we are right now is in a fantastic place. The market right now is in favor of wines that have some nuance and are reflective of where they're grown. And that for us couldn't be more perfect, because that has been what we've stood by since the very beginning. We, as Mom mentioned, we're an all-estate winery, meaning that our team has grown every single grape, has cared for every vine on our property that's gone into our wines. We're dedicated to the vineyard, this place. This is what drives us. And so has winemaking changed in our 50 years? Yes. And has ours? A little bit. But our philosophy has remained steadfast. As we learn more about our vineyard each year, every single decision that we make becomes more detailed. And so what we do in the winemaking process is we adapt what we do in the cellar to amplify the voice of the vineyard in the glass. That is our goal. And when we hit it right, it feels really good. And we've had a few vintages recently where we felt we nailed it. And this year has brought us a little bit more joy, some bright spots in 2020. And that would be that at the largest wine competition in the world, the Decanter World Wine Awards, where over 16,000 wines are tasted by the best palates in the industry. Both our Chardonnay and our Cabernet finished in the top 1%, being the leading wines from North America. And so, this is definitely, it's great when the market decides that, agrees that what we're doing is the right thing. So
yeah, that's got to be amazingly rewarding. John, let's talk about philanthropy and education. Obviously, that's been a big part of the family tradition. You serve on boards, all of you do. You raise money. You host benefits for multiple nonprofits and universities and foundations and endowments. So what role does philanthropy play as being a regional leader as well? And has that changed, do you think, during the pandemic?
Michael, thank you. And Bay Area Council, we are honored and thank you. As you have seen from the video, my mom and dad were the prime catalysts for support of Bay Area institutions in their time. My father was relentless on the telephone. When our family moved to Napa, our focus changed. A little story. My academic career in viticulture and enology was limited to one class at the Napa Community College and an infamous 3-day course for new winery families at Davis. The Napa class was held in a World War II military Quonset hut with little heat and no cooling. There was no industry infrastructure. I was able to take a page from my dad's role and gather a group to build the Trefethen Viticultural Center. Later, I was able to marshal the industry to build a teaching winery to go along with it. Napa College is now the largest winemaking school by student count in the world. This is just one example of our belief that education is the foundation of a healthy, prosperous, and sustainable community. When the pandemic hit, we made a decision to go on the offensive. We would harvest, we would invest, and believe in our people and our brand, knowing that with their help, we could not only survive, but thrive. It has been a long 7 months, but every single employee is still fully employed and contributing to their community. We have 150 families, we call them, working with us. We have also kept everyone safe in a workplace, in an agricultural workplace that is difficult, so that we've had no workplace virus transmissions at all. There may be a moral imperative to invest in your community, but the leadership shown in that work endears your company into the fabric of your community. That is full of rewards for both you and your company.
Well, that's well said. Thank you. So, Lorenzo, you get the softball. What's on the horizon for the Trefethen family?
Thanks, Michael. As the really lovely video that you all put together showed, we are a family with deep roots. And it is these deep roots that allow us to grow tall enough to peer over that horizon. And so to honor our heritage, we must push forward. We were pioneers in the Napa Valley, after all, and that trailblazing spirit that drove my parents and grandparents animates us today. We may be one of the oldest wineries in Napa Valley. We are also one of the most innovative. Sometimes our experiments lead to something truly groundbreaking, like our Dragon's Tooth Red Blend, unlike any other wine, or our new culinary experiences, where we're extending our estate-grown approach from wine to food, sourcing more and more ingredients from our own gardens, just like Chef Keller does for his restaurants. My family's already talked about our commitment to this special place and the people who work here. That is our foundation. Our curiosity and the value we place on learning is what propels us to make every vintage better than the last. Recently, the future of our family was made quite tangible. 2020 has presented more than its fair share of challenges, but it also delivered 2 little bundles of joy. There they are. My daughter on the right, Zora, was born in the midst of San Francisco's lockdown, and Haley's son, Gus, on the left, was born just 10 days later, which is both weird and wonderful at the same time. So this is the beginning of our 4th generation, and they definitely have inherited the curiosity gene. They are both little explorers and are keeping us all busy and entertained. And so, since it is 11 in the morning and our palates are at their best, we'd like to end with a toast. Michael, I hope you'll join us.
I was not hard to twist my arm.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for this great honor. Here's to a bright future for all of our communities, this region, our country, and our planet. May we find the best in each other and come together, following the example of all the honorees today. For it is together and only together where we make progress. Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you.
Congratulations again.
Thank you.
She is one of the most powerful political leaders of our time. She is dedicated to improving the lives of American families and children. And she is a proud San Franciscan. To introduce our next speaker, please welcome Jim Wonderman, the president of the Bay Area Council.
Thank you, Alex. I'm very excited to introduce our next speaker, and I do mean speaker. She's been called the most powerful woman in American politics in a career that has spanned more than 40 years. President Barack Obama called her an extraordinary leader for the American people. She was the first woman to be elected Speaker of the House of Representatives in 2007. Boy, seems like yesterday. And the only person in more than 60 years to be reelected Speaker after losing the position. She was the architect of the historical Affordable Care Act, along with numerous other landmark legislation to benefit working families, the environment, consumers, and the rights of women and minorities. And all that, and she's also a mother, a wife, and a grandmother. Yes, and sometimes she's a thorn in the side of just a few Republicans, and once in a while, even a few Democrats. I've known Nancy Pelosi for most of those 40 years when she was the host of the Democratic Convention host committee back in 1984 when I worked for Dianne Feinstein. That's when we met. And what an amazing career and what incredible leadership you've provided to the city of San Francisco, our state, and this country. It is my distinct honor to introduce Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Kaiser Permanente Chairman and CEO Greg Adams, who will be leading today's conversation. Welcome, Greg and Speaker Pelosi.
Thank you, Jim. Welcome, Speaker. It's great to see you. And thank you for taking the time to join us I know you've got such a busy agenda, so thank you for taking the time. I think we'll just jump right in if you're good with that. I mean, Jim mentioned that you've been Speaker since 2007. You made history. You've been the highest ranking woman in government. And this month, Kamala Harris made history by becoming the first female vice president-elect. So a good question here for you. What is it about the Bay Area women make them such exceptional leaders, the two of you now becoming the most powerful women leaders in our government?
Well, thank you very much, Greg. Before I answer your question, may I say how honored I am to be with all of you, to congratulate your honorees, Dr. Susan Desmond-Hellmann. I'm a big fan of hers, and I know she's a big fan of the San Francisco Giants. She's a sports fan, so I'm glad she's back in the area, and hopefully soon we can all go out to the ball game. To Bernard Tyson, your predecessor, Greg, we miss him so much. We were all shocked to get the news of his passing, but he made such a difference, and we all respect and admired him and what he did, not only for Kaiser Permanente, but as a part of our community. And I understand that Denise accepted his honor earlier, and we love her so much, and I pray for their family all the time. And the Trefethen family, well, Alex knows that we pass the Trefethen family from time to time up in Napa. And every time I go by and I see that sign on the road, I think, what a wonderful family. Obviously a beautiful success in the wine business, but always doing everything beautifully, excellently. Their commitment to education in the East Bay, Mills, High School of Business, the UCSF, science and education, so many areas of excellence. Wonderful that they're part of the Hall of Fame awards. And so to Susan, to Denise, for Bernard, and to the Trefethen family, congratulations for this meaningful, at the 25th anniversary of the Bay Area Business Hall of Fame. To get the invitation from Alex Maron to be with you is a great compliment. When he called me to say that you were having this, I thought he was going to say, can you get me somebody? And I said, no, I want you to come. So I'm very honored to be with all of you. So again, let's salute Chair Mary Huss and the Bay Area Council for all the leadership that you've provided. And yes, Jim Wonderman, I've known him for many years, admired his leadership in the public sector, the private sector, the nonprofit sector. He knows all of the connections. So you're saying, well, let me just say, are we thrilled, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, are we thrilled that Kamala is now the Vice President of the United States? Don't make me cry. It just brings tears to my eyes. I would say, when you ask why so many women, Barbara Boxer, Dianne Feinstein, the list goes on, and now the next generation, Betty Yee, Malia Cohen, Fiona Ma, Eleni, all these people. Actually, Dianne Feinstein started a lot of this. When she became mayor, people then realized that a woman could be mayor, and that opened a lot of doors. In my case, Sala Burton, a woman member of Congress, pointing the way for another woman. Usually a man does that for a man. You don't see too many women having that capacity to do it, and she did. So it was women promoting women that I think were very much a part of what happened in the Bay Area. And now we can just celebrate that we have not only a woman, an African-American woman, an Asian-American woman, a Bay Area woman as Vice President of the United States. It's pretty exciting.
Thank you. And I should say a woman born at Kaiser Permanente, Oakland. So we're very excited.
Oh, wow. I mean, we have so many. Zoe Lofgren, Anna Esch, Barbara Lee. There's a full array of women leaders. I don't know how many are born at Kaiser Permanente, but all supportive of you.
So let me, thank you, Speaker. We're all kind of dealing with in 2020 the spotlight that's been placed on racial inequities and injustices in our country. At Kaiser Permanente, we've chosen to really make equity, diversity, and inclusion a greater priority. We're actually saying that we will raise equity and inclusion to the same level that we have, and that we honor safety and quality in our organization. So as we think about where we are today and the challenges that we face, what are your perspectives on how we are addressing these issues in society? And in particular, if you could, what is it that you think we as corporate leaders could do together to advance equity, diversity, and inclusion as we go forward?
Well, thank you. Thank you, Greg, for that question. I have this conversation quite frequently with Alex. What am I calling him? Chairman Maron, who cares so much. It comes from a family with a great civic sense of responsibility, and the success that their family has had, the American dream they want for other people, and they see the possibilities in the private sector to lift that up, and the possibilities. So Alex, thank you. Let me just say, for being an intellectual resource, but also a very candid, shall we say, in friendship, candor is very important. So thank you, Alex, for always being on point with the question that Greg just asked. The issue is about justice. Justice. If there's one word, it's justice. It's economic justice. It's justice in healthcare. It's environmental justice. It's justice in the court system. And that, the sense of justice makes all the difference. So when we put legislation together, working together, public, private, nonprofit ideas, we have to remember, what does this mean to the people? It isn't our big fight, just not to get political, but our big fight is we're not trickle down, we're bubble up. And the grievances that we have to redress about lack of opportunity for so many in our society has not been a good thing for our society. The better people do, the better everybody does. It's not a zero-sum game. If we do well, it's at your expense. No, let's all get in this together. And so I would say that creating an atmosphere, and I think Joe Biden is a great person to lead in this way, because he's not, he's the man. He's not going to be pulled by this or pulled by that. He knows his purpose. He knows his why. He knows that in order to get things done for people, it's not just about relentless, persistent, dissatisfied advocacy, which is important, but it's also advocacy for unity. But we do not serve our country well if we think that it's all trickle down. It has to be. Now, an economic plan that builds the infrastructure of America with workforce development. To the Trefethens and their commitment to education. It's about education, the great leveler that lets people rise up to play their part. And people are hopeful about what Joe Biden will do in this regard. Not in a partisan way, but in a patriotic way. Healthcare. Now, let me just give you one example of what we're living with now. And this relates to what you do. In the COVID crisis, we haven't been able to get a bill because they say, oh, we're for this, but then they don't go for it. And what they cut out that we can't accommodate, what they cut out is everything that we have in there for communities of color. Everything we have in there for a public health service to do the tracking and the rest. And unless we recognize the strength of and the importance of the public health service in our country, we're all already doing a disservice to everyone in America, because unless we're all safe, none of us is safe when it comes to a virus. And of course, with the vaccine possibilities, the idea that we could use a public health service for the equitable distribution of it. But they just cut it out. They said that's not COVID related, just cut that out. And the stuff about minorities, people of color, more people dying of COVID, people of color. If you're a black child, you're 5 times more likely to go to the hospital with COVID. If you're a Hispanic child, 8 times more likely to go to the hospital with COVID than a white child. We really have to recognize the challenge in order to solve it. And again, it comes back to justice. And I think that the private sector and the nonprofit sector and the public sector can more easily work together if there's a shared goal, a vision, and a plan. And Joe Biden's a person with a vision and a plan, but open, confident enough about what he believes in, humble enough to listen. What can we do that makes the biggest difference, that is sustainable and is fair?
Excellent. You know, you mentioned the fractures and kind of the grievances that the pandemic is showing to our nation, really to the world, and people who are black and brown and marginalized. And you kind of, I think you went there and answered this, but is there, what do you think are the prospects of another round of stimulus as COVID-19 continues to rage?
We have to. We absolutely have to. In fact, Chuck Schumer and I today are writing a letter, Leader Schumer and I are writing a letter to Mitch McConnell to say, come back to the table. We have to get this done. We have to get this done. But we can't do it unless we're going to crush the virus. And they've had, I don't know, herd immunity, whatever track they were on. It prevented them from accepting the fact that we had to do mask wearing, social distancing, testing, tracing, treatment, separation, sanitation to stop the spread. But now with a vaccine on the horizon so soon, it gives it should give people a motivation that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. So this is worth the investment of time in case they just didn't feel that way for some reason. And we'll have a president, and people pay attention to the president, whose words will weigh a ton in this regard. So we have to, and I want to do it in the next few weeks. Otherwise, we'll have to do it in January. But by then, more people will die. More people will, evictions. 17 million children in America food insecure. Millions of their families on the verge of eviction. And we couldn't get them to act. But hopefully we will now.
Great. You know, you mentioned the election a couple of times, and there are lots of thoughts, I'm sure, that everyone has about the election. But as you think about the future and your leadership, what do you see this election meaning for the Democratic caucus?
Well, look, we lost, we still have 4 states that we're fighting in, so we'll see what the number is. I think people have not, if you want to talk politics, right? I don't think people really fully grasped the strength and the depth of our election last time. We won 40 seats, 31 of them in Trump districts. Very hard. And as Alex can tell you, I told our friends, I need your help because he wasn't on the ballot. Now he is. These seats are going to be harder to hold than they were to get because Trump is on the ballot. People said, oh, no, we're just going to pay attention to the Senate and to the White House. You won, you'll win again. I said, don't penalize us for winning. We won a tough fight. And people did help, and so we held the House. We don't know by how many votes. We'll see when these states are finished. But we won the White House. And every one of our races, whether we won or lost them in the House, contributed. More races in Pennsylvania and Michigan and Arizona and Nevada and Georgia contributed to the Electoral College success of Joe Biden and, of course, all over the country to the popular vote. So we think that we had a mandate. We wish we had more members, but having the White House is so big. I mean, to have shared values about all the things that we are talking about. And I say to the Republicans, take back your party. We need a strong Republican Party in this country. Take back your party. This isn't who you are. And they said, well, you have to beat them in the election, then we'll beat you in the election. We'll be back to sort of a normal debate on where we are on the spectrum of the role of government and whether federal or local or whatever it is. But I do hope that the Republican Party will be recaptured instead from the hijacking that it's going through. That's just my opinion.
Thank you. Speaking of mandate, what would you say are your main priorities as we kind of transition over the next year or so? Okay, so when we ran in 2018, and it carries over to now, we had a simple message: for the people. For the people, we would lower the cost of healthcare by lowering the cost of prescription drugs and preserving the pre-existing medical condition and the other benefits in the Affordable Care Act. For the people, lower healthcare costs, bigger paychecks by building the infrastructure of America in a green, resilient way. Good paying jobs, workforce development, equity in some cases of contracts and the rest. So it's not just about jobs, it's about ownership. Women, people of color, veterans, rural, Native American, everybody participating. But infrastructure has not been a partisan issue. Because everybody wants infrastructure in a country. It's a different infrastructure than President Eisenhower building the interstate highway, which was a remarkable thing back then. But this is about water, of course, bridges and roads and all that, mass transit, high-speed rail, infrastructure for broadband into rural or underserved urban areas. It's about, did I say water, and water, so important. So it is, I think we will have success with that. In fact, President Trump, every conversation I had with him up until about some months ago was about, among other things, we talked about infrastructure. And until it was time to say how we're going to pay for it, and then he walked out the door. But that's, so we'll deal with the Affordable Care Act, enhance it. We wait to see what the court will do. But we already have our enhancement and lowering prescription drug costs. And President Trump said he wanted to do that. So we were looking for areas of agreement: lower health prescription drug costs, build the infrastructure. Our third point, cleaner government, he wasn't interested in. But the first two, which were about jobs and the lives and livelihood of the American people, we thought there was some place to work with him. Well, now we have another start. So the healthcare piece is essential. It's the first, second, and third issue for America's working families because it's about their economic as well as their health security. Jobs, 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 jobs. You can't lose that four-letter word enough. Clean government. And so those will be the first. But with all of that, we have our
top 10, which include those three, but also gun violence protection by passing the background check legislation, protecting our dreamers by doing something on immigration reform. We have an array of other issues like that. LGBTQ, our Equality Act and discrimination against the LGBTQ community. The Voting Rights Act passed that. Equal pay for equal work. You see, all of it fits under the bigger paychecks, healthier America for all. Liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. If I could, I'd like to go back for a moment to the pandemic and kind of what we're learning from that. We're in a number of states throughout the country. We've partnered with California and other governors and secretaries of health to really look at, how do we understand, mitigation, containment, suppression, contact tracing. One of the things that's very evident across our country is that our public health system was not prepared for this pandemic in terms of resources, in terms of staffing, in terms of technology. As we kind of think about going through this, as we think about preparing for another pandemic, any thoughts on what we need to do and how we could strengthen our public health system?
Well, let me first thank you for what you're doing, what Kaiser Permanente is doing. And I know because you've said it, but I know because I hear it from others. The intellectual resource, you are the example you set, and the rest. So thank you for that. This is absolutely essential. In other words, we can't be thinking incrementally. We have to be thinking not transformatively. What would our public health system look like if it was to meet the needs? Now let's go there and engineer back from that to get that done, but not say we have to do a little more here, a little more there. And that's why we thought COVID would offer us that opportunity in the bill, but they took that language. We still have it in the bill, but they did not agree to go for it, and we'll see what happens in the next negotiation. But let's assume for a moment that we're not going to let that stand in the way of getting a bill now, but as we go forward. I hope that we can continue to consider you an intellectual resource. There are two things that are, to us, seem very obvious from what the experience of our constituents. The public health service must be, what would it be if we had it ideally designed to be? Let's go there. Nothing incremental. Secondly, community health centers. Community health centers carpet the country with community health centers. So there is the facilitation of people coming near to home, culturally appropriate, affordable, and the rest. And that is a big part of, we have that in the COVID bill too, and we have it in our infrastructure bill. We have it almost every place to have more of that. But as we put the pieces together here, we can't be thinking of how it was and go back to, well, it's not back to normal. It's back to something, forward to something, build back better, as Joe Biden says. Moving America forward, as our slogan is. So if again, we have to listen to healthcare providers. And if I just may say on that, one of the disappointments that in our bill that we couldn't get yet was honoring our heroes, our healthcare workers, our first responders, police and fire, our transportation, sanitation, food workers. They enable us to exist. And yet, because of state and local budgets, which have had serious outlays to pay for the coronavirus and serious revenue loss because of the shutdowns and the rest, really need our help. And they, the soon to not be president anymore has been saying, oh, the governors just squandered the money, you want us to bail them out. Now, this is strictly coronavirus centric. What are your bills? What is your revenue loss? That's what we want to help you with. And I say that because I see people say, oh, let's praise our workers, but let's pay them. Over 1 million of them, maybe 1.25 million, growing number, have been fired. And did I add teachers in there? Teachers. Most of the education comes from state and local government. And we have some percentage, under 10%, comes from the federal government that they don't really want to spend in the right way. So that's part of our fight, but not to go too far down that path. Just to say, these are the people who are doing the jobs for us. They've risked their lives to save lives, and now they're losing their jobs on top of it. Go on unemployment insurance. What savings is that to the taxpayer? But what a loss in services to the community, as well as the economic and the fiscal soundness of our state and local governments, which is important to our national fiscal soundness.
Speaker, I know they're going to kind of drag us both off the stage any minute. We're probably running out of time, but I could talk to you all day. I just want you to know that. I
can listen to you all day.
A couple of final questions. One is, I think there is a sense that with the Supreme Court arguments that the ACA may not be under threat going forward. So I'd like your thoughts about, should Congress be thinking about the possibility of a different outcome? And then the final question, and then we'll conclude, Jim and team, is what can we, the Bay Area Council and leaders in the Bay Area, do to support you and to support the transition of leadership?
Well, let me start with that. Again, Alex will know I'm always asking him, what do you think? What do you think? I don't have to ask him. He volunteers, as you probably know. But it is to have advocacy with unity. I sent a letter to my colleagues yesterday. I said there's advocacy that can be dividing, advocacy that can be unifying. So let's find out how we, again, respect opinions, listen, and make our case confident and humble. So, but the big challenges, and we have to think way into the future about all of it too. So it's incremental, it's transformative. So the entrepreneurial thinking that you do in the private sector is very refreshing to the legislative process. To think ahead, to take risks, because we are the party of Franklin Roosevelt, and people think of that as an old idea. But Franklin Roosevelt was about persistent, bold experimentation. Persistent, bold experimentation. So it isn't about wedded to an old program. It's about riding on the entrepreneurship of an idea. The other question was
just the ACA. And
okay, let me tell you this, and I hope this doesn't take too long for me to tell you this, but this should give people hope. Okay, so we watched the ACA. We were pleased with the arguments. We were proud of the case that was made. California was chosen as the prime presenter, but the House were represented by Don Borelli, and we thought he did a great job. So we were pleased. And I thanked Javier Becerra this weekend for what they did as well. The arguments, the comments of the justices, who knows? Who knows? But it was better than not having bad comments. But should they decide to go against the Affordable Care Act and not just severability, like the individual mandate, and leave the rest intact, if they were to take away pre-existing condition benefit and all the rest, that would be a big problem for the American people and a big political price to pay, which we don't want them to have to do, because that was part of the, people talk about the 20 million people who are covered by the Affordable Care Act, but we are also talking about the 150 million families that were affected by the increased benefits, including pre-existing condition benefit. You know the benefits, I'm not going to, but let me just tell you this one story. A few years ago, we had this Women's History Month. We honored the women of the court, Justice Kagan, Justice Sotomayor, and Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Ruth Bader Ginsburg spoke for the women, and she got up and she told this story about 1876. A woman wanted to argue before the Supreme Court. She was turned down 6 to 3, because she was a woman. That's what they said. She didn't take no for an answer. She went to the Congress, lobbied for 3 years. 1879. Congress passed a law that said if you meet these standards, you can practice before the court, whether you're a man or woman. And then Ruth Bader Ginsburg that day said, It's one of my favorite stories about how the Congress was ahead of the courts in terms of equality and justice for women, etc. Then come forward into this century, and the courts ruled against women in the workplace, in the Lilly Ledbetter case. They ruled against women in the workplace. How could they do such a thing? But they did. And the dissent was written by Ruth Bader Ginsburg. The Ginsburg dissent became the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act in the Congress, which we passed. And it was the first bill signed by President Barack Obama. Again, the Congress being ahead of the court in terms of justice, etc. Now, the reason I mention it is we'll do the same thing for the Affordable Care Act, should they decide to take it down. We already have our enhancements. We have some more things we want, perhaps a public option, which I have always wanted. And so we're going to make it better anyway. The question is, do we start from scratch if they take it all down, or do we start from a severability argument, piece of it, and then go from there? But we're ready. And we have the tradition of Congress overturning what the court has done on other occasions. So anyway, there's a lot going on here. We're in transition. We're in lame duck. We're in orientation of our new members, the constant reinvigoration of America, and we want them to have all the opportunity to go forward into the future, and that's part of our transition here as well. So thank you for the opportunity to spend some time with you. Thank you, Greg. I hope to see you soon when we can see each other. Alex, thank you for the invitation. I'm glad I could see a backdrop there. It's beautiful.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Speaker. I really appreciate your taking time and giving us an update on what's happening in Washington, D.C. Good luck with your agenda. And that concludes our 25th anniversary Bay Area Business Hall of Fame induction ceremony. In the year of despair, I hear a great ray of hope in our program today. Inspiration from Bernard Tyson in his position of leadership, the prospects of biomedical breakthroughs as personified by Susan Desmond-Hellmann, and the example of continuity as exemplified by the Trefethen Family. The call for action and transparency by J. Powell, and the prospects for legislative action for family support in America, and an infrastructure bill from Speaker Pelosi. These are all notes of hope and prospects for a better 2021. Congratulations to our honorees. Thank you to the Hall of Fame committee and to our speakers and presenters. And special thanks to Rufus Jeffries and the Bay Area Council staff for curating this event. All the best. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Alex. Thank you.
So long, Nancy.